Hi there, welcome to Peg Space Bytes. Today's Space Byte is about Gemini 6 and Gemini 7. Enjoy. Gemini 6 was scheduled to launch on October 25th, 1965 at 12:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unfortunately, the Agena rocket failed to go into orbit an hour before Gemini 6 was scheduled to launch, which caused that mission to be postponed for a later date. Gemini 6's main objective was to rendezvous with the Agena rocket. Because of the postponement, Gemini 7 ended up being launched before Gemini 6. Gemini 7 was scheduled to stay in orbit for 14 days, so its mission patch design symbolized a marathon-like mission. It also was going to rendezvous with Gemini 6A after that spacecraft was launched on December 15th. Gemini 7's capsule was cone-shaped and had two components, a reentry module and an adapter module. The total height of both modules was 18.8 feet. The reentry module was a pressurized cabin that had two seats with ejection capabilities. There was a hatch above each seat. The diameter was 3.2 feet on the top and 7.4 feet at the base. The height was 10.8 feet. It is manufactured by McDonnell Aircraft Corporation. The rocket that launched the Gemini 7 capsule was Titan II. It was 107.6 feet and had 530,000 pounds of thrust. There were two astronauts chosen for Gemini 7. Frank Borman was the commander, and James A. Lovell, Jr. was the pilot. Captain James Arthur Lovell, Jr. was born on March 26, 1928, in Cleveland, Ohio. He graduated from the United States Naval Academy with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1952. He also attended and graduated from Test Pilot School, University of Southern California, and Harvard Business School before Lovell became an astronaut. He was a test pilot and program manager for Naval Air Test Center and was a safety engineer for Naval Air Station. He is married and has 4 children. James Lovell became an astronaut in September 1962. He was selected for 4 space missions. The first was aboard Gemini 7 from December 4th through the 18th, 1965. Gemini 7 was the first American rendezvous of 2 manned spacecrafts. Then Lovell flew on Gemini 12 from November 11th through the 15th, 1966, which was the final Gemini mission. Lovell was then one of the 3 astronauts to fly aboard Apollo 8 from December 21st through the 27th, 1968. This mission was the first manned flight to the moon. His final space flight was on Apollo 13 from April 11th to the 17th, 1970. Apollo 13 had an explosion in one of the oxygen tanks that caused the crew to return to Earth without landing on the moon. Lovell was the first man to travel twice to the moon and the only man to fly there twice without landing on the surface. His total time in space was 29 days, 19 hours, 5 minutes. James Lovell earned many honorary doctorates, awards, and honors, including the Distinguished Eagle Scout Award and NASA Distinguished Service Medal, along with being inducted into the International Aerospace Hall of Fame. He was a consultant for the U.S. President's Council for Physical Fitness and Sports. On March 1st, 1973, James Lovell retired from the Navy and NASA. Then he became the president and chief executive officer of the Bay Houston Towing Company. After that, he was the president of Fisk Telephone Systems Incorporated and ended his career as the executive vice president for Centel Corporation. He retired from Centel Corporation on January 1st, 1991. Captain James Arthur Lovell Jr. is still alive today at the age of 92. Colonel Frank Frederick Borman II was born on March 14, 1928, in Gary, Indiana. He graduated from U.S. Military Academy, West Point, with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1950. He also attended and graduated from California Institute of Technology in 1957, where he earned a Master of Science degree in Aeronautical Engineering. In 1970, he completed Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. Frank Borman served in the Air Force from 1950 to 1970. While in the Air Force, Borman was a fighter pilot, operational pilot, instructor, experimental test pilot, and an assistant professor at West Point. He is married and has 2 children. Frank Borman became an astronaut in 1962. He was selected for 2 space flights, and both missions were with James Lovell. His first mission was aboard Gemini 7 from December 4th to the 18th, 1965, and the other one was aboard Apollo 8 from December 21st through the 27th, 1968. Frank Borman's total time in space was 19 days, 21 hours, 35 minutes. After 20 years in the Air Force, Colonel Frank Borman retired in 1970. He earned many honorary doctorates, awards, and honors, including the Congressional Space Medal of Honor, and was inducted into the International Aerospace Hall of Fame. After he retired from the Air Force, Borman worked at Eastern Airlines, starting as a special advisor and ending as Chief Executive Officer when he retired from that company in June 1986. Borman was fortunate to serve as Special Presidential Ambassador and traveled worldwide to carry out different assignments. He is also the author of the book titled Countdown, an autobiography of Frank Borman. Colonel Frank Frederick Borman II is still alive today and lives in New Mexico. He is 92 years old and is only 11 days older than his astronaut companion, James Lovell. Since Borman and Lovell trained and were ready, it was decided that Gemini 7 would launch before Gemini 6A. Gemini 7 was launched on December 4th, 1965 at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on top of a Titan II rocket from Cape Canaveral, Florida, from launch pad LC-19. The flight was scheduled to be a long-duration flight and would rendezvous with Gemini 6A. During its 14-day mission, Lovell and Borman performed more than 20 experiments. 9 were human life sciences experiments, which are more than any previous spaceflight. The 2 astronauts also slept and worked at the same time, which was never done on previous missions. Due to the length of the mission, Gemini 7 achieved the longest duration in space of any other mission before it. Gemini 7 splashed down on December 18, 1965 at 9:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Atlantic Ocean, 12 kilometers from the targeted landing site. The total mission time was 13 days, 18 hours, 35 minutes. Borman and Lovell were picked up by a helicopter and transported to aircraft carrier USS Wasp. I hope you enjoyed today's Space Bite. Learn about Gemini 6A on the next Space Bite. Remember, endeavor to discover new horizons and challenge yourself to reach for the stars. See you next time. Bye-bye.